Coming up, the Brooklyn Nets take the Oklahoma City Thunder right down to the wire. But more importantly, Day'Ron Sharpe makes a statement about his future with the Nets, and Killian Hayes tries to reroute his career. We dive in, coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. He's Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Armbrecht. We thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We are 100% free on all those great platforms. And let you know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And Doug, oh, baby, this is when we don't talk about the loss. We talk about the memories and the players that we watched along the way.
I mean, Nic Claxton, who? I mean,
and listen, if you're gonna get flagrant fouls, buddy, if you're gonna miss it for stacking up the techs, you better watch your back because Day'Ron Sharpe's lurking in the shadows like a beast.
I said before the game, I was like, you know, if they do like a beat a like decently full strength Sixers team, lose to the Wizards, then beat the Thunder, we're on full on simulation style. Like, there's no doubt about it. We'll just throw your hands up in the air. It's all right. We'll just let our tech overlook. I mean, tried their best. I thought they were going to do it. This game is just another example. We have a ton to talk about. This game is another example of how annoying the Nets are to play. Like, the Nets are just the most annoying team in the league to play, because when you look out on the court across, when it's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Williams, Chet, and Isaiah Hartenstein, and these guys look across the court and they see Killian Hayes and Zaire Williams and Keon Johnson and Cam Johnson and Day'Ron Sharpe. And they know they're probably like 17-point favorites or something, or 14-point favorites, whatever they went into this game as. And they look across and they're like, oh, this is going to be easy. And then you get to halftime and you're like, wait, hold on a second. Brooklyn's put up 76 points. This is the best defense in the league, by the way, the Thunder. Yeah. By far the best defensive.
Allegedly.
Well, the second half, they look okay. Easily the best defensive efficiency team in the league. And they've just let the Nets score 76 points on something like, I had looked it up, the starters were at 85% true shooting at halftime. The starters. I mean, so when you look at this team, you look across the court, you see these guys who are like NBA retreads, bench players. You got the MVP front runner in Shai. And this is just what this Nets team does to you, man. They play so hard, and they're just so undermanned skill-wise. And effort gets you so far, and then, eventually effort kind of runs out and skill takes over. But this game was just another one of these games where it's like, oh, are they really going to do this to us? Are they going to beat the Thunder? I mean, come on. Like, this can't happen. Yeah.
You know what? As well they should, though. Like, and there is, because we talked about this, it's like, it's not about, the best of both worlds, play really tough but still lose, and the tank odds and everything else. Like, no, we don't even need to talk about that. We can just focus in on the fact that, like, this team has done this time and again over the course of the season. They just did it against, it's funny. It wasn't the same thing by the end of the Cavs game, because there's a large portion of that game you go, oh man, I can't believe they're doing this to the Cavs. But then when the Cavs came back, the Nets faded, right? And they weren't able to hang close enough and be within two possessions, where even when the final buzzer sounds, you go, okay, that was kind of representative of what this really is. Now, this game, there were moments in this game into the fourth quarter where if you're the Oklahoma City Thunder, as you say, it's like at halftime, down the stretch, you go, well, we're not really going to be in a two-possession game against the Brooklyn Nets, are we? Like, we're not going to let Day'Ron Sharpe, who I want to start that conversation on here, because we can touch back into this game all we want, but I don't want to get past the 4-minute mark without saying, are we really going to let a guy like Day'Ron Sharpe come in here and start to manhandle us on both ends of the floors in some way? And Day'Ron Sharpe, who sets career highs in this game, in, guess what, almost minutes, by the way, 31 minutes he played last night. That's his second highest total. 2022, we need to go back to when he played over 30 minutes in a game, let alone his career high in rebounds in 15. Guess what? Also going to be career high tied assists with 5 coming in there. And then, of course, he puts up monster points in this game as well. That's a career high with 25. And I think you'll probably have this one up there, the true shooting percentage in this game for him. Oops, I did it. 95.6 true shooting percentage for Day'Ron Sharpe. He also went ahead and had a career high in his free throws, 7 taken, 7 made. The 3-point shot is there as well for him. So it's not just around the basket. He stuffs, I think in the third quarter, super casually in the lane, just takes Hartenstein, who's like thinking about doing a little flip, and almost like half flat-footed, just reaches up and goes, "No, I don't think so." There was almost a casualness, and in the post game, he just talks about like, "I play hard every single play. That's my thing. Like that's what I do, and that's what makes me better than other guys. I think that I'm the most dominant player, especially when it comes to defense and to rebounding, working on the glass." This really does feel like we've had these moments with a lot of other Nets players. This has the like statement. Yes, there really is something here in Day'Ron Sharpe that the Brooklyn Nets can now think about valuing going forward, and maybe they always have. But this did feel like a bit of a coming out party for him, especially against a team like the Thunder.
Yeah, I mean, he was amazing. Like, he really, at one point, you said his shoot, what did you say his final true shooting was? Like
95.6%.
Yeah, it was at 114% because I did it like when he had like not really missed it all during the game. There was at one point he hadn't missed a shot, and it was something like 100. It was basically breaking the stat. It's like, well, you just can't physically do this because at some point, you can't just be the most efficient player of all time where you just make all the shots and just never miss and whatever. And the part where it's not just putbacks and stuff too, where he's hitting threes. I mean, it really was a coming out party. I mean, Nets fans know that he has an insane motor. Like, this is why the offensive rebounding numbers are just so elite, which I'll get to in a second because he's got some eye-popping offensive rebound numbers. But overall, we talked about sort of like what the plan was going to be with him in the offseason. Maybe that's for another episode. But when you see games like this, the screen setting, he's got such a big body that when you have him out in the court, and if he's just going to be smart enough, because there's been some like mental lapses for him in the past, but if he's going to be really smart, if he's going to set sort of like bone crushing screens for some of these ball handlers, that is going to open up stuff in the offense for your team. Like, Claxton is good, and he has a skill set that is very different than Sharpe's. They're not anywhere close to the same player. Sharpe's a better screen setter. Mostly just has a much wider body, right? He just has a much wider body to like just fill up more space that guys can run pick and roll off of. You saw that work with Killian Hayes, who we'll also talk about in this episode. And so, there's going to be certain situations where, against an OKC team that has a couple big guys here too, when they're starting Hartenstein and Chet at the same time, and that's really a lot to contend with. He looked like he held his own. And when you have, and it really goes for the whole Mets team, but when you just have super high motor, it just gets you really far. It doesn't get you all the way. Like, at some point you have to be able to do the other stuff, right? And usually pretty soon you have to be able to do the other stuff too. But the motor just gets you so far. And these guys just have motor. Like, they just have motor all game long. They do stuff. I'll give a couple of examples later of stuff they do that has to be so annoying for the other team. when it's game 60 and you're on the road and the Nets are doing some of the things they're doing, these teams have to be like, come on. like let's not do this. But there's some of the reasons that this team is able to hang in some of these games. And yeah, we're skipping the part where they lost to the Wiz. Whatever. Okay. Like, that's forgotten. Okay, whatever. Problem. Yeah, who cares? Like, who cares? We're talking about where they hang with the Thunder. That's what we're talking about here. And they did, and we can talk about some of the things that got them there. But yeah, Day'Ron Sharpe was at the very, very center of it.
In the end, the Nets do fall 129-21, at home to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Coming up here in a second, though, we talk about not only those annoying things that they do to every team in the league, but other players in this roster that really showed out double-digit scoring for the entire starting rotation. Plus, did Killian Hayes finally show the thing that Doug and I spent an episode hyping up about a week ago to prove that he deserves to be in the NBA? We'll dive into that here in just one moment.
Before we get to that, tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. When the game tips off, NBA action's just getting started. No better place to get in on that than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. Hopefully, you're going live bets here on the Nets. So even if you miss opening tip-off or want to bet on the fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you can grab one of those same game parlays. Nets have been really, really good against the spread. Covered again here against the Thunder. Although I will say, partway through this, she's like, well, they're going to cover by 1 million. And then midway through the fourth quarter, it's like, they might not cover at all, but they got there. This is the story of the Nets season. It's all about the cover, baby. You can get in on the action right now on FanDuel, where new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
All right, so as we continue today's Locked On Nets episode, talking about the Brooklyn Nets losing 129-121 to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Obviously, an incredible performance from Day'Ron Sharpe. You mentioned about, the offseason, a conversation for another episode. Also, the dynamic between him and Nic Claxton and what that could mean going forward. When we get inside this game here, I want to talk about, as you mentioned.
Well, real quick, sorry. I want to only because I want to just give two Day'Ron Sharpe numbers just before we go. Is that all right? If we're going to go off,
you know what?
I'll
allow it. Go ahead.
Okay, so real quick, just quick Day'Ron Sharpe numbers. One, on the offensive rebound status, he has 111 offensive rebounds at this point. That's 32nd in the league. And if you look at his minutes, I mean, he's like, sometimes he's 1,000 minutes behind some of the guys that are above him. There's no one above him with fewer minutes. So he's the very best offensive rebounder per minute in the league. It doesn't appear to be all that close. He has more offensive rebounds than Nic Claxton in less than half the minutes. Okay. Like, now that's, again, this is part stylistically, and Day'Ron Sharpe's just really good at it. So I'm not like, this isn't like, and Claxton's pretty high in this too, right? Claxton's 33rd. So it's not like he's done nothing all season. But the fact that Claxton's like hasn't even been terrible at this, and Sharpe has essentially like doubled them up on a per offensive rebounding place is just so sick. And it's one of those things. It's like, oh, just pass the eye test. It's like, how is he right there? Like, how's he there? It's exactly where the ball. That's a total skill. Like, knowing where the ball is going to land and having your body positioned is totally a skill. And one other thing with Day'Ron Sharpe, easily this season, the Nets' best plus minus guy, plus 77 on the league. On the season, easily the best guy. And we can get into who you want to take a guess who the second best guy is on the team that's played. Yeah, the second best guy on the team on plus minus level. You want to just take a guess real quick because it's going to lead us to our next thing.
Trendon Watford.
Killian Hayes. All right, so let's talk about the start.
What did he have in this game? Because it was plus 20 for Day'Ron Sharpe in this game, and Killian Hayes came out with a plus 10. Boy, you got to really be doing the good work in those now, four games into his Nets career, and this guy is rising to the top of the charts. You got to love it, by the way. And guess what? Shame on me, because Doug's trying to lead me there. He's trying to put the breadcrumbs down for me to get to Killian Hayes, and I couldn't quite do it. We'll continue to talk about the stats from this game as well.
You're like, Cam Thomas?
Tosan. Go Tosan. I think he's really put that. Reese Beekman. I think it was Reese Beekman.
Dennis Schroeder.
Anthony Melton? Can I go with Anthony Melton? No.
Oh, actually,
I'll
tell you. It's funny enough. We're really derailing this. Actually, Anthony Melton is ahead of them.
Yes, of course he is.
Well, no, but it's from minutes that he played with another team. So,
okay. So we'll talk a little bit more about this game in other ways. A lot of guys contributed in big areas over the course of this game. But for a player like Killian Hayes, who we said 10-day contract, I think you're on like day 8 now, and you're thinking, okay, we don't know another way to phrase this. And a lot of people were very excited about what he was doing at the G League level, and that's awesome. But when he came up to the pros, like we've seen in the past, and we said this in his first game, hey, listen, get his legs underneath him, games moves a little bit fast. He plays 3 games against Cleveland, Philadelphia, and Washington. He's shooting 2 of 7, 1 of 3, 2 of 6. He makes 1 out of 6 3-pointers. There's some facilitation there, like, okay, some little things. And then in this game, to your point, against the second best behind the Brooklyn Nets defensive team in the league, 7 of 13, 5 of 10 from beyond the arc, career high 5 made 3-pointers, and also gives you 7 assists in this game, 19 points. Like this mattered in a big way. As big of a game as it was for Day'Ron to kind of make this statement, there's something that we know. Like, this guy just loves to get rebounds. He's incredible at it. The 3-point shooting is certainly coming around for him a bit as well, with more consistency. Getting to the line this year has been big difference. We didn't mention this. Big difference for Day'Ron Sharpe at the line from a free throw shooting perspective as well, which really matters for their bigs. But Killian Hayes is coming to the end of the line here. Like, the 10-day contract without this game last night, you probably go, okay, well, that was fun. Maybe we'll see you around the NBA circles. Instead, he showed some of the things that seem to be working at the G League level, and certainly give you some excitement about the idea of, hey, keeping this guy around for the rest of the year would definitely be in our best interest if we're just thinking about backcourt players and where we want our future to go.
Yeah, the funny thing about tanking teams is this will happen where you will have guys on like 10 days start and then play crazy minutes and then kind of like disappear. Like, so it's not like I think he's going to hang on here for sure.
Yes.
Right. So
by the way, it's not a guarantee, but
yeah, but I do want to caution everyone that, like, sometimes this performance stuff, like, it doesn't always get there. If you follow some of these tanking teams, these guys disappear. Sometimes they hang, right? Like, there's been like Memphis a couple years ago, it's like Scottie Pippen Jr. It's like, oh, he's going to start and play crazy minutes. Oh, not playing, and then now he like ends up kind of making it and he's on the team. But there's many examples like this where these teams that are in sort of like just a very gray area of like their motivations, these 10-day guys can just come and go. And it's not always like 100% performance based. Now, that being said, it does make sense for them to keep him on here simply from a point guard, like the point guard aspect of being able to facilitate and sort of like help some of these other guys like Day'Ron Sharpe and like Nic Claxton from a pick and roll standpoint. Functionally, it makes sense to keep him on. We've said this lots. Like if D'Lo is going to be kind of like day to day here, and I think he's going to be reevaluated. We're just not sure. They don't really have anyone that can really run pick and roll. Trendon Watford and Day'Ron Sharpe pick and rolls aside, like they don't really have it. So even just having someone who can sort of snake a screen, screen, rescreen action and kind of like position guys into the place he wants them to go. He's very methodical. Killian Hayes is like, he's a slow, methodical, movements and stuff like that. That kind of does matter. So I think it's going to end up hanging on. He's, when you haven't played many minutes, one big game can kind of swing your stats, right? Like you can go from a lot of question marks to now shooting 38% from three. So sample size kind of tells all and will tell all in the end, but it's been, thank goodness this happened, because this actually, if it had been just like it had been, we would have been like, this is why it's not really happening. But that's, one good game can kind of just shit you out against a really, really good team. And maybe it's just him getting comfortable. And that's kind of the whole story.
Yeah. Yes. And there was a part of it too, unfortunately, due to circumstances far beyond my control. I was going to do a live on last night just to talk about the team, preview the game, and why. Mostly because I was thinking, well, the Nets are likely going to get blown out here, so we might as well talk about some narratives around the team. And one of them was going to be, as Killian Hayes' 10-day contract winds down, is just unfortunately just more of a sample size of things we've seen in the past. And to your point, well, two things. One game does not then make the career, right? So you can't sit here and say, look at what he did in this game against OKC, as impressive and exciting as it was, and say, okay, great. We know that we have, player X now into our rotation. But because you're a tanking team, you can afford to give up the rest of the season and maybe have him have bad games, right? He can go right back out there and have some clunkers like he did, or maybe not take as many shots like he basically wasn't. But if you're going to build up to 13 shots from the field, 10 shots beyond the arc, there's a great, in a minute here, I want to get to the Jordi Fernandez statement about how many three-pointers he wanted from this team. Zaire Williams chuckling in relief in the postgame here as well. So there was a couple of really interesting elements beyond Day'Ron Sharpe, beyond Killian Hayes, coming out of this game for Brooklyn. We'll do that here to close things out in just one moment.
Before that, let you know, with Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive with Robinhood Gold. Your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%. Plus, you also get a 4% APY on your cash in non-retirement accounts. It's over 8x the national savings average. The perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold to receive your 3% boost on annual IRA contributions. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risks. Rates subject to change. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 a month for 1 year for first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Over 8x the national average. Savings accounts interest rates claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18th, 2024. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC.
All right, so to tie a pretty little bow on today's Locked On Nets episode, talking about the 129-121 loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder. I want to get into the rest of the stats here from some of the players, obviously, Jordi Fernandez and where he's coming from with his energy in the game and maybe at halftime as well. But before we do, though, we mentioned at the top, the ways in which the Brooklyn Nets annoy other teams. And really, I think even though it's happened all year, end up surprising them that, oh, this is what they're going to do for 48 minutes. This is what we have to put up with. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's just like a couple things. They did it all game, but like there was two that stood out to me. It was near the end, I believe the third quarter, and they were the Thunder had like a side out, like sort of in front of the Nets bench, and they just brought two to the ball with like 19 seconds left on the shot clock or something like that. And I just know that has to drive other, because they wanted to guard the inbounder, 80 feet from the basket, and then to guard the inbounder and possibly double, because it was like Jalen Williams who was ended up going to bring up the ball up because they had taken SGA out. And I'm just like, that has to just be so annoying, right? Yeah. It's like, this is kind of not the handshake about a regular season game about what's supposed to be happening. And again, like play hard, do whatever. But the part where we kind of like college basketball essentially full court press style you in a game where it's like not the end or anything like that, those little things just have to be so annoying. And then not to mention, like, they put Reese Beekman in, and it's like, hey, you're just going to pick up Shea 90 feet, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that leads. And if you watch the Nets play, you'll notice a lot of times teams get like pretty easy baskets at the bucket, right? Like that will happen a lot. Part of that is because, well, they're like not amazing, but two, it's like by style, they pick these guys up so far half court, in the half court, that once they get past the ball handler, it kind of gets easy, right? So what they're trying to do is just disrupt the natural flow of the offense, make it so that, because there's only 24 seconds on the shot clock, if you can have it so that the other team can't get into their set until like 16 seconds, well, like that means something. It's like really meaningful. The 8-second difference about, or I mean, at that point, like maybe 5 seconds, because after you bring the ball up, those seconds really count, like in the way the teams think about and feel out their actions and the timing that they've set up all season, when all of a sudden it's just like harder, more annoying. It's a lot more work to get the ball over half court. That stuff is like how you raise your floor when your team is not that good. So they do this all season. These guys, they have a certain sets of guys who just do it. And it's just so funny to watch, because I always just think about the other team, where they just have to be like, come on, right? like let's
see coach is looking over at Cody like,
well, and again, sometimes it turns into layups. Like it turns into layups. Like there are times where it turns into these like sort of like mini transition layups, and the other team, and it looks very easy, and you're like, oh, where's the center on this? But they're not even playing conventional defense. They're not playing like some kind of drop where the center's getting killed. It's like, well, now it's a 5-on-4 because you got past the initial guy, and now it is going to be kind of like the math is just never going to work out in your favor. So just things to watch for the Nets, because they just do this all season long, and I always just laugh because I just know the other teams have to hate it.
There was 100%. There's also a part of this game where going into the fourth quarter, you get some of the classic moments, right? Trendon Watford has been good trying to bring the ball up, but we've talked about before. He can get lost in the sauce a little bit, trying to like make passes to players. There's outlet guys 3/4 of the way up the court. He's trying to pass it right at the midcourt line. There's 7 somehow Oklahoma City Thunder players on the court at that point. He's into them. There was a Keystone Cop, section of this game late where it was like, the Brooklyn Nets, when you go hard the way they do for 48 minutes, and when you want to push the tempo, but you also, they're one of the slowest paced teams, you want to try to do that, but you also don't necessarily have the personnel to always accomplish it. You get some really clunky moments, right? You get some really sloppy turnovers, some easy layups going the other way. The funny thing is, it was 15 turnovers for Brooklyn. This is why they actually were able to stay in this game. Oklahoma City only turned it into 11 points off of turnovers. So opportunities knocked, but OKC didn't necessarily get them across the line. Other things when we look at this game as well. So I mentioned there earlier, all 5 starters were in double digits here. Zaire Williams, 6 of 15, 5 of 13, high volume there. This was a career high, maybe tying or career high assist game for Cam Johnson as well in his 33 minutes, knocked down 4 of 7. Sneakily got himself back on track in this game from beyond the arc. He's been in the 30s and low 30s the last month and a half here. So his numbers have quietly dropped off. It was a good offensive game in a lot of different areas from players on this roster. The one surprising one probably, and I'm not doing this to trend negative in any way, we can talk any other positives we want to, Trendon Watford is like a first game back from his long delay and injury. 18 minutes, 1 of 7, had the 4 turnovers. Like, I brought him up for a reason. 4 assists, 4 turnovers. He struggled in this game to find his, kind of jack of all, master of none impact in this game. And you needed Killian Hayes to step up in that regard because of the lack of ball handling he had elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it was the bench you can't blame the starters for the loss here. Like, the benches who got killed. The starters were across the board, like, overwhelmingly positive. It was the bench that got absolutely slaughtered.
Real quick too, by the way, on Keon Johnson, I want to mention this because he missed a lot of threes late in this game, like where it could have maybe closed the gap a little bit. But just to your point, he was 4 of 11 from beyond the arc. It's only 4 of 12. Like, it's not great, but not terrible for him. Like, it's easy to look at the end of that game, but he played well for 3.5 quarters. He just had, I think, 2 or 3 really nice looking threes at the end of the game that didn't go down for him. So did Killian Hayes, by the way, where he barely front rimmed it on a key possession. A lot of that is just like, I think, the build up again. You're running hard and hot for the entire game, and then down the stretch, you need a couple of those buckets and you're burnt out. Or frankly, in Keon's case and in Killian's, we don't make a lot of these shots. So it's going to be the results of the results. Cam Johnson hit a key one that got them back within 2 possessions late, like he typically does.
Yeah, it was rough for Keon at the end of the game. Again, it's hard to fault him here. Like, it was just kind of like, hey, you're not going to shoot, crazy percentages the whole game probably, but yeah, the final ones, he did have some good looks probably in the last like 3.5 minutes, and that would have maybe kept it close. I don't think it really would have mattered, but the overall though, yeah, the bench gets slaughtered, but the starters, this starting unit has played. I had it right here. The Hayes, Cam Johnson, Keon Johnson, Sharpe, and Zaire has played 28 minutes together.
Nice.
Yeah. I love when the sample sizes work out like this because the numbers are so awesome. They have 160 offensive rating and 117 defensive rating for a plus 42 net rating on the season. So like, let's just keep this group the starters. But it's funny too because it like passes the eye test. You can run if you run hot on threes, like even just that alone. But partly like that group, it was like, well, we're going to run hot on threes, and if Dayron's going to get all these second chances, then like you are gonna actually kind of raise your floor. The second chance stuff is hard because if you open yourself to being pretty vulnerable. If you go for the offensive rebound, you are setting yourself up to really get hit aheads. Like you're setting yourself up to really get out to transition. Because if you miss, you're in big trouble. Like this is why teams sometimes don't want to sell out to get offensive rebounds, like even early in the game, because if it doesn't work, you're kind of dead. Yeah. But when Dayron Sharpe's there, it kind of like the math starts to kind of tilt in your favor a little bit because he's so adept at getting them that you can kind of like maybe skate by. So, because like sometimes I think I see fans complaining, they're like, "Oh, the effort that not like offensive glass." It's like, man, if you don't have the personnel to do it, you really shouldn't try because you are gonna get killed. Like if you don't get the rebound, you're dead. Like you're already in a really disadvantage. Like you're really in a really disadvantaged, like even cross matching or just transition situation. So, long story short, the offensive, the starters are the story here. The defense, the bench gets crushed. But look, you can't really blame them too much. The bench has been the best unit for this team all year. So it's like this has been the
irony there, right?
Like this has been the group that's mostly kept them in games. So it's like hard to totally fault them, really.
And of course, thing of beauty, when you're Dayron Sharpe and you're big on the boards, that's when bad percentages from some of your teammates really plays to your advantage because you're just there to grab them. The last note for me came from Jordy Fernandez. I think in the post game, Zaire Williams said this when he was asked about taking. The team took 61 3-point attempts. And he said, apparently, coming into the game, Jordy Fernandez told the team, if you don't take at least 45 3-point attempts, I'm going to bench the entire roster. That was Jordy Fernandez's message to the team, which because he knows, right? He knows that that's the path to success. He also knows that I get it. We don't have necessarily the personnel across the board to do this, but it is about trying to crunch the numbers. And supposedly, I saw this somewhere on social, that after one of these plays, because this happens a lot too, it's not the reason why they lost the game, but the Nets are not going to get calls. Like this roster is not going to get calls. You saw Williams kind of lose his mind a little bit on a foul that was a foul, but it was the buildup of everything else where he just grabbed, I don't know who it was, in the middle of the court, essentially, as he tried to split the defense. I think that Jordy Fernandez was seen mouthing, "I'm coaching for my life here." It's like he is so invested in every single possession. I watched him in game over a 4-possession stretch, coach the team looking to the left, and then look back to the right at the referee and scream something violently at him. Look back to the team, set up the defense, look back to the ref, and ask him I'll say, polite question about the way things are being called. I know, coach of the year probably for Kenny Atkinson coming up there in Cleveland. Like, these things matter. I know people say dime a dozen coaches, you miss it on this and that. I don't know. It's not always the case. And I'll just keep hammering home how invested Jordy Fernandez is, not just in his team, but like in basketball. This dude clearly drinks it like an elixir every morning when he wakes up. And last night was another example of that.
If he had been the coach during the Big Three era, they would have won the championship. I'm positive. I'm positive. Like I'm positive. Like it's not. I don't even necessarily think it was the coach's fault that those guys all left. I don't think that's. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that if the scales tipped and he had been like it was never on the table here, but like if he had been the guy, and stars have done dirty to worse guys, right? But like it's just one of those things where it's like he's been so great and he seems so respected and everyone's so bought in, and we already know he can handle the star thing because he did the Team Canada piece. I'm like positive if he had been the coach, these ifs and ands, like they would have stayed. I just feel it in my bones. Like he's that good.
Sticking to your guns. If it had been, and by the way, could have happened maybe Kenny Atkinson. I who knows what would have happened either. But it's like sticking to your guns and allowing players to say, I don't think we want darn. we didn't want this coach, but damn it if it's too hard to not respect him, right? Like you turn the tide on that by results and by the way the coach approaches things. And so far, he's been able to do that in Brooklyn. We'll see what it means for the long-term future. Lost 129-121 for the Nets at home to the Thunder. They'll pick it back up on Friday night against the Portland Trail Blazers.
All right, we're going to get out of here. Make sure you subscribe over on YouTube. Make sure you give us a follow over on Twitter. We're over there doing the work on Twitter as well. At Doug Norrie, at Adam Armrecht. All this stuff's free for you. Just easy to support the show. Follow on YouTube. Give a follow on Twitter.
Never run back to what broke you. And that, my friends, is Frank Ocean.
Oh, my daughter will like that one. One of the all-time great poets. We'll be back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
Basketball.